Hello, Internet. Happy Tuesday. And this is Sunday service on Tuesday. This is the cat. Say hello, Sekhmet. Sekhmet, say hi. Yes, hello. So obviously it's Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday. I had a market that I was doing on Sunday, so I could not do Sunday service with y'all, unfortunately. And yesterday I was just like KO'd, and so today is the day. So we're doing a belated Sunday service today, right now, on Tuesday. And the topic for today, some kind of clickbait, but there's a reason for it, is basically maybe the conservative Christians were right. And maybe we need a new ethics in witchcraft. And this stream of consciousness babble today is inspired by, obviously, the horrific assassination that happened on the 10th. I guess it's the 23rd now. And so this is kind of almost 2 weeks ago. I don't know. It feels like it happened yesterday to me still a little bit. But with that assassination, I know a lot of you guys are probably sick of me talking about it, but here we are. Apparently more people attended that service than did the JFK assassination funeral, as well as the Martin Luther King funeral. So this was a very highly attended event. I have not watched the replay yet, but I do plan to. But anyway, my point with this kind of clickbaity title today is to, in some way, and I've had a few podcast episodes kind of about this. So this has clearly kind of been on my mind for a little while, so it's probably no surprise to everybody. But a lot of the left and a lot of the witchy left have been celebrating this assassination. And I've seen a lot of celebration, joyous videos of people basically just being really happy about this. And a lot of people within the witchy space being really happy about this and celebrating this. And it has been said by a lot of people online, including myself, and I really agree with this, and I think this is worth considering and like thinking about, what does this mean? What are the implications of noticing what I'm about to say? That for the George Floyd situation, when that happened, people rioted, they broke into buildings, they looted various stores, they set things on fire, and it was this massive kind of violent movement where a lot of people were very aggressive. It was a very destructive impulse after that happened. And I do find it kind of interesting that we did not see that with this assassination. What did we see? We saw a lot of people embracing Christianity again. We saw a lot of people praying. We saw a lot of vigils and memorials being organized, all of which was peaceful. So I think it's worth thinking about, if we want to be good people and if we want to be operating from a space of ethics, and we want to be operating from a space of being mentally healthy, being psychologically well, if we want to be kind of existing in that way, in that space, I think it is worth really spending some time thinking about, okay, why now with this assassination are people praying, lighting candles, being peaceful, let's say having a renewed sense of faith? Erica Kirk at the memorial apparently forgave the shooter. And why are we seeing that as a response if these conservatives are so evil, according to the left? And why, when George Floyd was kind of the martyr of the left, I would say Charlie Kirk would be the martyr of the right, why was the left response to basically destroy everything? And why is the right's response to actually not destroy anything at all, but rather to pray, to come together, to be peaceful, to forgive, and to organize in a kind of positive way? And so since most of the witchy community is kind of firmly on left, I think that is something that, as a leader or thinker or speaker or whatever in this space, that I want to inspire everyone to kind of think about, like, why is this happening? What is wrong with the ethics of the left? What is wrong with the ethics of a lot of the witchcraft communities? A lot of the witchcraft community is on the left. what is wrong with everyone's ethics and ontology and way of viewing and seeing the world and being in the world that causes folks to feel like this type of behavior is good and acceptable, this like destruction, this looting, this rioting, rather than, you know, the vigils and the coming together. Because if we're witches, in my opinion, like if we take this stuff seriously, if we want to be good people, if we want to be, you know, coming together with people who are maybe from different walks of life, if we want to be organizing in a positive way, if we want to be taking the power of prayer and magic seriously, is that not kind of the appropriate way to respond to any kind of thing like this? And hello to everyone who is here. Feel free to say hello in the chat if you feel so inspired. And so in my mind, like if we're going to look at these two situations, we're going to compare like what happened when each of these different, let's say like martyrs got killed, and we're looking at the different responses, I think it does say a lot. And I think that even if folks might be skeptical, like I'm not a Christian at all. I do have some saints up in my home. It's just part of what I do. It always has been. But I'm not a Christian. But you have to give it to them, right? The Christians are responding, I think, in the most moral, ethical, spiritually healthy way to this horrifying, devastating thing that has happened. And I think as witches, most of which who are on the left, again, I'm not, but I used to be. But I think as witches, we have to ask ourselves, like, okay, why do we as a community lack this moral clarity? Why do we as a community lack this ability, let's say, to come together and to pray and to create vigils, let's say? Why is that not an impulse that we've really seen in the community? Why is the impulse instead to celebrate murder and to celebrate, let's say, the hexing and cursing of someone that a lot of folks in the community might have disagreed with superficially, even though they likely had not actually watched any of his stuff? Kind of beside the point. My point here is, what is going on that we have this moral decay and moral rot in our communities, that a lot of our community has celebrated an assassination and has celebrated the cursing and hexing of someone they don't like, and who, you know, wants to be, who wants to be, let's say, even more violent. Like what is going on in our community that we lack so much ethically? And so, you know, a lot of the criticism of, let's say, witchcraft spaces or pagan spaces, that we are like godless heathens. And it's, of course, like many of us are atheists, many of us are animist, or have a kind of more vague idea of what the divine is. Of course, some people are polytheists, whether that's hard polytheists or soft polytheists. Some people are still Christian as witchy type folks. So the godless part, it's like, that's neither here nor there. Some of us do have a relationship to God. Some people don't. Some people believe in that. Some people don't. Some people like divinity. Some people don't. But I think the criticism that witchcraft gets from a lot of, let's say, Christians is that, like, where is the moral code? Like, where is the code of how to live right? Where are the instructions of how to be a good person? And I think that's a fair fucking criticism of the community. Because a lot of people in the witchcraft community are dickheads, honestly, are just unpleasant assholes who have like vendettas against people and who will celebrate, let's say, assassinations, but who also will reflect that vitriol back into their community if they don't like someone. Like witch wars are very common as like a silly, hey, boss, what you doing? Pick a struggle. Pick a struggle. A lot of people in the community do create drama. Like the witchcraft community is very dramatic. I think a lot of people in the community, unfortunately, are very ungrounded and unwell and lacking, let's say, in moral fortitude and moral grounding and any kind of coherent sense of ethics. And I had a face laser appointment yesterday, and my face laser lady is a Christian. And so I always just talk to her about Christianity and like ask her questions and hear her perspective. And it is fascinating to hear this kind of close up and personal. I'm sure there's a lot of y'all who don't need this explained to you by somebody else, but it, as a non-Christian, I do find it very intriguing how so many Christians do have this very like highly developed moral code, this very developed sense of what is right and what is wrong and why. And it's not just because God says so. Sometimes it's just basic integrity, basic morals, basic honesty, basic respect for self and others. And I kind of love that they have this intense moral code. Like I think that's great. And we can kind of see that moral code and that integrity and those ethics lived out in how we're kind of seeing the Christian right respond to this assassination. We're seeing them come together. We're seeing them pray. We're seeing them have vigils. We're seeing a lot of positive stuff. We're seeing forgiveness. We're seeing all of these qualities that are actually not divisive, not hateful. They're actually, in mourning. There's a lot of positivity there. There's a lot of, trying to spread the message of the gentleman who was assassinated. There's all of these kind of positive behaviors that are coming from, I would say, a very morally upright kind of place. And I think I don't think that can be ignored. And I think that there's something that the witchy community at large, even though we are quite a diverse community in terms of our beliefs and all of that, like, why don't we as a community have a more developed sense of morals and ethics? It does bother me, which isn't to say that, it's a one size fits all situation. Obviously it's not. It's always a little bit more nuanced and complicated than that. But I just think there is this unfortunate moral rot in a lot of witchcraft spaces. And, I've seen it even sometimes among students and clients, not often, but sometimes, where, folks will get tempted, let's say, to be power hungry, or people will get tempted to use their powers for, manipulation. And in my mind, like, I know everyone's human, we're all fallible, like we all have our like vices, we all have our base like animal instincts. But in my mind, like, if we're coming from a good moral place, like none of that should even be like a consideration. And what I really admire about a lot of the Christians I've met, it's like, whatever we want to say about it, obviously there's tons of Christian types and whatever, it's fine. But I haven't seen that level of like the desire to manipulate other people, the desire to, have power over other people, the, like the desire to be a little bit like ethically naughty. Like I haven't really seen that. And it just does make me wonder, like, okay, how can we as a community fix this problem? Like, what is wrong with the norms in the witchy space that so many leaders and books and whatever has caused a lot of people to feel that is appropriate? You know what I mean? And I just feel like something needs to change. I don't know exactly what it is. And we are a like many-headed hydra, so to speak, in the witchcraft community. Everyone's got a different opinion. There's as many definitions of magic as there are witches who practice, and a lot of leaders in the space are going to feel really differently about a lot of different things, and I respect that. I think that's totally fine. However, I've become, as I've gotten older, less and less of a fan of relativism, of like a moral relativism, of that thing is totally fine, even though it seems fucked up. It's like, no, sometimes things are just fucked up and sometimes things are just wrong, and it has nothing really to do with culture. Like some ethics and morals, I think, are universal. And I feel like we just, in the community, and this has always been the case in the fucking pagan community, to be honest, like we do often turn a blind eye to a lot of shit. And this is why, I'm sure some of y'all listening either right now or on the replay, hopefully at least some of you guys will know what I'm talking about. But a lot of in-person witchy communities are full of like crazy fucked up people, by which I mean like predators, by which I mean like sometimes the community is too accepting of unethical people. And this has happened for like decades at like pagan gatherings where there's like people who are preying on women and all of that. Like there are a lot of people who have been exposed for that type of behavior in the pagan community. And like, why? Because pagan community and witchy community often prides itself, or at least it did back in the day, of being so accepting. And it's like sometimes when you're so accepting, what you do is you open the door for predators to come up in your business and be acting in these fucked up ways, and then people get hurt. And everyone is so afraid of, having boundaries or saying, hey, this is maybe not okay, that, it's so common for witchy spaces to let predators in the community out of the guise of toleration and acceptance. And I'm sure there's a book I'll be able to cite on this that's going to come out in a year or two. There's this concept called suicidal empathy by Gadsad that is going to be coming out sometime in the next few years. I think he's working on it now. But the concept, I think, is pretty self-explanatory, and I think we see it a lot, right? This idea that a lot of what we're seeing right now, especially on the left, is that people are suicidally empathetic, where there's just kind of a lack of self-preservation. There's a lack of being able or willing to take a stand on the ethics and morality of certain issues. And I just think that is not the way forward. I think it's just very toxic. And I think one of the things I really appreciate about the right is, like, people are taking a stand for certain things. We are drawing certain lines in the sand and saying, like, this is ethical, this is not, this is cool, this is not cool. And being willing to stand up for that. And, you know, with the Charlie Kirk assassination, literally, like, no one looted anywhere. No one blew up anything. Like, do you know what I'm trying to say here? And unfortunately, there is something that happened within the moral rot of the left, and then by proxy, a lot of like witchcraft spaces, where people have become okay with, oh, you are dehumanized, I'm going to objectify you as this symbol of all the bad things, and so therefore I can curse you, hex you, celebrate when you die. And like, for me, that is so toxic, and I don't really want to be in community with people like that unless they're willing to open up to new ways of thinking and perhaps, you know, changing their mind on that type of behavior, that type of ideology, that type of ontology. And by ontology, I mean, what is reality? Like, if they think reality is such a way where everyone who they disagree with is a literal Nazi or literal fascist, that is by definition dehumanizing people that you disagree with. And unfortunately, it's become very common on the left to just call everyone who doesn't have the same exact opinion of you a Nazi, which I just think is like so intellectually childish and just juvenile and just also just factually incorrect. Like, I think a lot of people using this word all over the place don't actually know what they're talking about. And interestingly, are acting a lot more authoritarian and totalist than the people they're complaining about, which is interesting. But basically, what I'm interested in kind of trying to provoke here is a discussion about ethics, a discussion about morals, a discussion about how can we as a community move away from violence, celebrating violence, and also move away from being assholes, especially being assholes online. Because I think that is what has inspired a lot of this type of behavior, like IRL, like in person in the real world. And I think a lot of this does come from people being radicalized online. And if you have fringe ideas, fringe beliefs, maybe witchcraft is a fringe belief where you live, maybe paganism and this type of thing is kind of fringe where you live. And it was for me when I was growing up too, right? And so I found a lot of my community online when I was like 13. You know, I was like on the internet forums at that age and was like, you know, talking about animism online with like people who were probably older than me, and it was safe and it was fine and there was no drama really. And it's interesting to me that now the online space is not as much a space to find community and connection and solidarity and coming together for positivity and learning. It has kind of become this space of radicalization, of extremism, of dehumanizing other people. And it's such a shame to me because the internet is got all this opportunity for us to learn about the differences between us and other people, to become more understanding, to give other ideas a chance. Like, for instance, with this Charlie Kirk thing, anyone calling him a fascist can spend a few hours on YouTube watching his things start to end and will probably have a very different idea of him. But a lot of people are choosing not to do that. They are just, you know, they've got access to all this information and are just not acting on it. A lot of people are being willfully ignorant. There's an increase of tribalism. There is an increase in this like extremist rhetoric, like more extreme ways of speaking online. And I see this in the witchcraft space too. And I'm not so sure why the witchcraft space has been so taken over by this type of ideology that can be so kind of militant, that can be so, I would say, hateful, divisive. I've been mouthing off on Threads, which in case you don't know is like Instagram's version of Twitter, a lot lately. And one of the things I've noticed is a lot of people just want to call me names. And whenever I've said like, okay, well, what do you mean by that? Or like, why do you think that about me? Like, no one can really answer. Like, they just want to kind of hurl insults in your direction. And I've gotten that a lot over the DMs. I've gotten that over email over the years because I, had an opinion that people didn't agree with or whatever. And so it is interesting to notice like this is happening in our community. This is such like a norm in our community. It's a norm. It's normative behavior for people to be jerks to each other. It's normative behavior for there to be witch wars. It's normative behavior in the witchcraft space for people to just like act in these bizarre, kind of uncool ways towards each other. And so, of course, the community is celebrating an assassination because there's a lot of other things that people are celebrating. They're also horrible, but they've justified it in their mind of like why it's acceptable. It's again this moral relativism that I think has completely poisoned the community, at least in North America. I don't know about other countries, but at least in English speaking internet of North America, and probably to some extent the UK, they don't fully know what's going on over there. And I would love to see the community have a better sense of ethics and morals. I would love to see the community be more operating from a space of integrity and operating from a space of, not to sound like a fucking cheesy hippie, but like positivity and prayer and contemplation and a revival of hope and resilience and positivity. But that's not really what we're seeing. We're seeing instead a lot of this like victim mindset, fuck everybody, weird type of vibes in the community. And I really don't think that's what witchcraft is actually about. Like, it really isn't. I've had some people tell me I can't be a witch because I don't agree that witchcraft is only for oppressed victims. Like, if you look at the history of witchcraft, it has not ever only been for oppressed victims. It's kind of for everybody. It's for rich people, it's for middle class people, it's for everybody. Like, everyone has practiced witchcraft throughout time. And so there is this like interesting kind of ahistorical selective memory within the community that I find interesting. And it really is just people like cherry picking history to kind of make their point and to justify their present day behavior as grown adults. And it often is, I would say, a kind of unhealthy behavior. So that's some thoughts on that. And I just want to say, like, I kind of admire the way that the Christians have come together with this tragedy. They've come together with their faith. They have come together in prayer. Like, why can't we do that as witchy people when something happens? And I think there's a lot of reasons why we don't. It's because the community is so fragmented. The community is so toxic. The community is so polarized. And the community, unfortunately, has no overarching unification when it comes to ethics and morals and values. And I wish that was different. I wish that was different because I would love to see witchy people coming together and making, let's say, a positive impact. But instead, we're embarrassing ourselves by publicly cursing people that we disagree with. It's embarrassing. And so in this situation, like, the Christians look great. Their behavior is ethical. Their behavior is moral. They're operating from a space of prayer and forgiveness. Why the fuck do witches as a group not operate that way? I think it's because it's a lot of, like, there is no core belief system that unifies us all. And I think a lot of people come into witchcraft because they want power. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that, or wanting a reconnection to our agency, or wanting to have a more effective idea in the world. Hold on, someone just is distracting me in the chat. Someone is from Wales in the UK. Hello, Tony from Wales in the UK. I've actually never been to Wales, but it looks really beautiful. Let's see. Tony says, and question and observation. It makes me wonder if these people that badmouth you and others are paid by the state, like the people of Wikipedia, namely the guerrilla skeptics. I would be surprised if anyone's being paid to talk shit about me. I think this is the thing. I think people are just doing it of their own accord. Like, they don't even need to be paid. The community is so toxic, and a lot of people's brains are just so broken that they don't even need to be paid to do it. They're just doing it because that's what makes them feel virtuous. That's what makes them feel like moral actors who have control over their life. It's actually quite sad. Yeah, honestly. This is the thing. I think society has gotten so toxic because of the internet, and likely a lot of other factors too. That people don't even need to be paid to do this type of thing. They just do it. They feel it makes them feel good. And how sad is that? That we're in this era where people feel good by bad mouthing others by name, like on the internet. It's like kind of crazy. Sorry, my mascara feels like it's old. It's like itching my eye. Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna sip some water. Sip some water. Check my phone while I figure out what else I want to talk about. Yeah. And, it is interesting that we don't really see these like prayerful witches that often, when something like this happens. What we see is this impulse towards retribution. And I want to say violence, but that's not always it, but it kind of sometimes is. So as many of y'all will know, I used to be very far left, and I think part of the reason why I've had like an interesting time the past few years is that a lot of my audience that kind of built me up, was far left. Like, I got a lot of my community from being that way, and it was authentic at the time. I am always kind of been authentic, and I've been very vocal about my switches in thought as I've kind of slowly been having it. But it's been really interesting to me that as soon as I kind of left that space, that violence that those folks would always direct towards others, they then would direct towards me. And that's not a very cool way to be. Because I think, like, if a lot of people, let's say, leave a group, like if someone left a group I was a part of, I'd be like, great, no worries. You don't believe the same as me anymore. That's okay. Like, enjoy your next season. Like, that's great. And so I really do think there is this kind of cult-like thinking on the left, and unfortunately in a lot of the witchcraft spaces. And we do see a lot of people acting in very immoral ways, which I don't really love it, and if it is so common for so many witches to be acting so immoral, like, why? Tony is saying, I've noticed that whenever you're on a live chat, YouTube deliberately slows the chat down. Yes, Wales is very, very gorgeous. I'm very lucky to live here. That's really cool. And there is a lot of interesting witchcraft history in Wales too. I have somewhere on my shelf, I think I probably shared this book in one of my previous lives where I was talking about like various witchy history books. And it is called Welsh Witches and Wizards by, I think, Michael Howard, put out by Three Hands Press. So I'm sure you probably already know about this book, Tony, but if you don't, it's an interesting one just to kind of get into the witchy vibes in terms of Wales, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah, I would love to go visit. But back to the topic, it kind of breaks my heart that witches as a whole right now are not this like pinnacle of ethical behavior. That witches are not right now people to admire for their moral clarity and their moral fortitude and their ability to do the right thing. It bugs me that that's not the case. And with this whole rise of, let's say, the witches hexing Charlie Kirk and everyone applauding that and being like, ha ha ha, like we have lost our way as a community, because like we've spent so much time like gaining people taking us seriously and not being seen as evil or laughable. Like those are kind of the two main ways that witches have been represented in documentaries. I did a paper on this like ages ago. I analyzed like how are witches portrayed in documentaries about witches, and it was pretty much like silly, silly, kind of dumb, and then it was evil and misguided. And then it was, I think that was actually the only two options. It was like either evil and scary and dangerous and immoral, or it was like silly, not to be taken seriously, just like, yeah. And so we are doing, I think, ourselves as a community a disservice by being taken over by these like base animal instincts, the people that have them, you know, to, let's say, be cursing whoever we disagree with. And that is not doing us as a community any favors, even if you didn't like him. Like still, like I did not like the for those of you guys who don't know, I'm in Canada, and so I don't like the current prime minister. I also did not like the last prime minister. They're both liberals. I think they have completely destroyed the country. But am I going to curse or hex either of them? Like, no. Would I rejoice if either of them passed away or was murdered? Absolutely not. It would be sad. And I just think the way that a lot of witches are behaving right now in light of current politics and current public happenings, it makes us not be seen as serious people, to use a phrase from Succession. We do not come off as serious people. We come off as malicious, childish, juvenile, and like evil. Honestly, we come off that way when we're talking about hexing people we disagree with. We are coming off as childish, malicious, mean-spirited, vindictive. We're coming off as petty. And I don't love that for our community. Like we have, we've always kind of dealt with this PR crisis of, this balance between being taken seriously, but not to the extent that people are afraid of us. And I feel like this whole thing has just kind of thrown that out the window. And I would love there to be a time, and I feel like there was a time somewhat recently, like where you could say, oh, I'm a witch, and everyone would be like, okay, cool. And like would see that as like a valid like choice of spirituality and depth and integrity and self-exploration and inner work and all of that. And I just feel like all this stuff, like witches hexing Trump, witches hexing Charlie Kirk, like I just think it's embarrassing to our community. And I feel like it makes us look like immoral, petty children who are just lashing out because we feel powerless in our life. And that is actually not what witchcraft is about. I think some people might push back on me a little bit and say, well, Sabrina, witchcraft is about like fighting the power. And what I would really say to that as a rebuttal is like, how about fighting those kind of immoral base instincts within yourself? Like fighting the kind of like authoritarian, like power hungry, mean, vindictive asshole within yourself, because that is likely where that work actually needs to happen. And that's actually likely what needs to be healed. And I think a lot of Christians are doing that inner work in a way that a lot of witches are not doing the inner work. And it's kind of crazy to like admit that here. It might not be like a popular thing to say. Tony says, yes, I have a rule. Don't wish people dead, and don't make fun of the dead, and don't laugh at another one's misfortune. Absolutely. Because I feel like if you laugh at another person's misfortune, like that is what is coming to you next so that you can experience it. There is a phrase like there, but for the grace of God, go I, like whenever it comes to some of these horrible things. And sorry, there's like something stuck in my tooth, you guys. I'm trying to get it. But I do think a lot of Christians are doing the inner work. You know, we see that. We see that the proof is in the pudding right now with how the Christians have reacted to this assassination of one of their favorite people. They've reacted with grace and passion and, in some cases, forgiveness. And, you know, they have not reacted with violent retribution. And to me, that shows a great deal of moral fortitude, moral clarity, moral strength, inner work being actually done, some sense of integrity in terms of values, and having a healthier mindset, a healthier, more adult mindset, to be honest. And I do unfortunately see with the reaction to the assassination, a lot of people in witchy space being stuck in this kind of adolescent headspace, this adolescent headspace of retaliation, retribution, laughing at someone's misfortune, laughing at someone's death. And I don't see the Christians doing that, you know? And so I think there's something that witchy community can learn from Christian community, like it or not, around inner work, values, you know, being able to grow the fuck up mentally, psychologically, spiritually. And I just haven't seen it in our community. I haven't seen it. And the community is just very toxic. And I hate that that's the case. It really doesn't have to be that way. And I've been really trying to think about, like, what is it about witchcraft that attracts a lot of kind of toxic-minded people? And I don't know exactly, because, like, that's something I'm going to have to think about. Maybe it is like the lust for power or feeling of, you know, not being able to be effective in your life. So you do want to be effective. I think witchcraft can attract a lot of folks with trauma, but I also think that witchcraft can heal a lot of people with trauma. You know, it definitely did that for me in a big way as well. And like my second book, Body Magic, which just came out, is kind of all about that journey. So do I think witchcraft can be healing and grounding and give that kind of moral clarity and healing and inner work and all of that? Absolutely. That's what it did for me. But it is a fact that that's not what it's doing for everybody. And I have to ask, like, why is that? Like, what is wrong with the community that a lot of people are not taking this to a positive place of inner work and are instead taking this to a negative place of destruction and, you know, reveling in destruction? And obviously I'm all about like death and rebirth and, you know, out with the old and with the new, like getting rid of what doesn't serve us. Obviously that's a huge aspect of witchcraft. No matter which way you slice it, like you've got the wheel of the year, we got the seasonal cycles, we've got this kind of like renewal, the death and rebirth of the self, as well as, you know, the earth. And there's something beautiful about that. And I feel like a lot of people practicing right now, for whatever reason, are not taking that to heart, and they're not really living it. They're not living these, I think, these beautiful values that are inherent within witchcraft. But then the other question is like, and I'm going against kind of some of what I argue in some of my books here, but it's like, I've seen so much toxicity in the community. It's like, why is that happening? What is it about witchcraft as a system that so many people seem to miss the point? And instead of doing the inner work on themselves to heal themselves, they're happy to do aggression towards other people. Like what went wrong where that so many people seem to have like missed that? And I think it's something that as a community, we really need to ask ourselves and like get emotionally sober and really sit down and self-reflect and ask ourselves, how can we be a part of the solution? How can we be positive role models in the community to act from a space of morals and ethics and good values and integrity and honesty and respect for our fellow humans, rather than from this space of celebrating destruction? Because I just want no part of that. Like, there is a death cult element to a lot of what I see in the space lately, and I don't love it. Don't love it. And Tony says, what goes around goes around. It's true. It's like, just because you're flesh right now doesn't mean you'll always be flesh. Like, life has its seasons and cycles. And I think when eventually we're going to live long enough to really see that. And, I've seen even that in my own life. Like some years I've been flush with cash, some other years less so. Some years my social life has been amazing, other years less so. Like we are sometimes health issues, sometimes it's not. Like we all are going to have these cycles and rhythms. Oh, hello, Melissa, conservative witch, and how's up, Sabrina? Yes, hello. So good to have you here. And honestly, I feel like witches can learn a lot from the fucking Christians. And I know there's going to be a lot of Christian witches, and I think that's cool. But I think we've just seen a masterclass in having good values and how the Christians have handled the assassination. And I want witches as a community, like if we really take ourselves seriously as a spiritual community, like it shouldn't be rocket science. Like we should be able to like react with grace and with integrity and with good values and with compassion and with curiosity and with prayer and with positive healing magic. Like, did we all forget that that's a thing we can do? Did we all forget as a community that magic is not just about cursing and hexing people that we don't like? Actually, we shouldn't be doing that at all. Like, what is going on? And I feel like, unfortunately, a lot of witchcraft community has just become like these kind of like petty like squabbles where people are just happy to just, be dramatic with each other and call it a day. And that is really not what witchcraft is about. And it's not what community should be about either in general. And it certainly is not what spiritual community should be about. Witchcraft is spiritual. It's not just about getting shit that you want. I think a lot of people in this space have forgotten that. And it's not just an Instagram aesthetic. It's not just about dressing a certain way. It's not just about any of those things. Actually, it's not about any of that at all. Tony says, agree. What is wrong with these people in the community? From what you've explained, it's eating itself. I'm not a witch or a wizard, but you do practice Reiki. Oh, okay, cool, Tony. Thanks for sharing. I'm curious if you see any kind of drama in the Reiki community, Tony, to like whatever extent there is a Reiki community. I'm sure there is one. And it's like I've seen a lot of this drama in spiritual communities, and like we've seen it as well. Like there's quite a few documentaries about abuse in yoga communities by the yoga like gurus. Like there's a Bikram documentary on Netflix where there's allegations against him. There's allegations against like so many of the big yoga gurus. And I do think it is interesting that we see in a lot of these like fringe, oh my God, there's like 3 cats up in my grill right now. It's the cats. All the cats. Choya, what are you doing? She's walking away. But I do think it's very interesting that in a lot of these kind of alternative spiritual systems, whether it is like witchcraft, paganism, something like Reiki or like yoga, that we do see like people seeking something outside the mainstream. Like people are seeking an alternative to like the normative, biomedicine, or they're seeking an alternative to, let's say, Christianity, or they're seeking an alternative to organized religion. And they're looking to these more like spiritual, kind of non-organized, non-hierarchical spaces. And yet these spaces often tend to be like worse and like less healthy psychologically than the spaces, like the normative spaces that people are kind of leaving for these alternative spaces. So it's kind of an interesting one to me that like, I feel like we see that pattern a lot. And I find it interesting, and it's probably something I'm going to try to write about over the next few years. I don't know, like what my research will look like for this, but I do think it's interesting because obviously I believe in the power of all these alternative spiritual spaces. I believe in the power of like alternative kind of healing things, like whether that's like naturopath or whatever. Like I like those type of stuff. Like I think it's done a lot of good for me. And like obviously I love the alternative spiritual space, but it is true that I think a lot of people come to these alternative spiritual spaces so desperate for healing, for belonging, for community, for family, for something, that they get kind of swept in and they don't like check themselves before they wreck themselves. And then these spaces end up chewing them up and spitting them out, or there's abuse, there's toxicity, there's like drama, there's like horrible, like weird interpersonal dynamics. And it's just weird. Tony says, no, not really. Apart from the ones that charge a lot of money to do healings, they think different, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? I don't really have any issue with people charging to do healings. Like, obviously, like, I feel like that's fine. For myself, I feel like that's like not something I have issue with, but obviously I charge to read tarot for people. So for me, this is my vocation. So I understand when people like want to charge for stuff like that. Though I grew up in spiritualism where a lot of those message services and healing services are free for people who show up. So I get it from both perspectives. I think people in terms of that should just kind of go with what they resonate with. If you want to pay for a certain person to do it, go for it. If you would rather go for the free option, go for it. There's of course going to be usually a difference, and I think there's something for everyone in terms of that. But and that's another interesting topic too, Tony? Like the idea that even within spiritual communities, there's like these discussions around payment and when is that okay, when is it not? Like personally, I think it's fine. Like clearly, because I charge for my services. Otherwise, so if I don't, honestly, I'm not a charity and I'm not like a saint. I've got shit to do, bills to pay. Is kind of how I feel about it all. And like I would rather, like, everyone's healing everyone on this earth is like not my burden to carry. That's kind of how I feel about it. But I totally understand why some people do choose to offer pro bono services, and I totally get that. Totally get that. But yeah, and it just goes to show, right? Like wherever you go, there you are. And like I wrote about this in my second book, Curse and Cure. Like wherever there's people, there's going to be like some kind of conflict. There's going to be some kind of drama. And obviously, you know, we see drama in organized religion as well. But what I haven't seen with this assassination and the aftermath is I haven't seen like really, and maybe I just haven't found it, but it has not shown up in my algorithm, and I feel like it would have if it was a thing. But I haven't seen these Christians like being dickheads. I just haven't seen it. Like I've seen people mourning, I've seen people praying, I've seen people organize vigils, I've seen people be positive and recommit to their values and speak up and, you know, push freedom of expression, push for all of these kind of positive things. And I didn't see that, you know, with whenever the left has a martyr that dies. And you know what's really interesting about the George Floyd thing too is I think it was I don't know if it was a year, a few months before that situation happened, but the exact same situation happened to a white man actually, who died in the exact same circumstance, but there was no outcry. And so one wonders if there was an outcry with that original circumstance, would certain police, I don't know, protocols, awarenesses, systems of behavior have been audited back then to prevent the whole George Floyd thing? It's a whole other interesting thing. I wish I could remember this guy's name that happened to. But I'm sure you can Google it if you guys are curious. Melissa says paid readings will be taken more seriously. I don't do readings for strangers anymore. Absolutely. Free readings for strangers. Yeah, I agree. And that's the thing too, is like, I feel like if it's unpaid for tarot, people tend to just see it as entertainment, something they can just ignore or not really care too much about. When it's like, actually, I put like my heart and soul and so much energy and effort into it, that like it feels just disrespectful to me and to my spirit team and whatever to just have it be like brushed off as whatever, which is why I charge, because to me it feels like a dishonor and a disrespect to my spirit team to not have that be compensated. But yeah. Hello, all 7 people here live. Feel free to say something in the chat. Thank you, Tony and Melissa, for saying what's up. Appreciate y'all. You know, we still got 2 cats on the couch. 2 cats on the couch, 1 on the window. So many cats. I'm gonna need some like more allergy pills. All their fur is like coming up to my face. But you know, I think I'm like feeling grumpy about all of this because I really do like believe in the community, and I feel like there's so much potential for something so great and so moral and so like something that people can admire and look up to as, you know, people with moral clarity and positivity and healing. And It's just not what I've seen. Like, it's just not what I've seen. And I feel like a lot of people in the community are very unhealed, unfortunately. And that includes some leaders in the community. A lot of leaders in the community. Which would be none of my business, but since they teach others, it is my business, because then I have to clean up that mess usually when I get the runoff students who are like confused about life. But yeah, Tony says that's fair. You got to keep the lights on. Yeah, I do. Even though actually I almost never use overhead lights. Like, I like natural light and then like spotlights. But yeah, I don't know. I think part of the reason I'm ranting about this is just because I really do like have faith in the community. Like, I believe that witches as like a brand and like as a thing can be seen as people with moral clarity, as people who are good people, as people who are doing good, as people who we can look up to and trust children with and will be good role models. But I haven't seen that. And it makes me so bummed, because I feel like witchcraft, as I say in my first book, Witch Body, it really is all about like coming together and connecting with nature, connecting with the land, connecting with our ancestors. Like, it is about this kind of lineage of connectivity and coming together across difference between humans and animals and spirits and plants and a table and a cup and coffee, and coming together across difference in this like networked assemblage of life and vitality, and how we don't need to be exactly the same in order to express ethics towards the other. Like, to me, that's kind of what witchcraft teaches. Like, we can all collaborate across difference. And so it seems like very confusing to me about how so many witches have like missed this memo, and that now we like are not a good example of moral clarity at large. We're not. And I find that depressing and embarrassing. It's like, I feel like a lot of witchcraft, and I don't know, I need to look at whatever witchcraft books are coming out these days. Like, I write about it in my books, consent and, ethics and all of that. Like, my second book, Curse and Cure, Witchcraft for Real Life, Magic for Real Life, get it on Amazon if you guys don't have it. Like, I do talk about ethics and morals and all of this. And I feel like that is one of the most important things. And like, why are we as a community like seemingly not keeping an awareness of these things? Like, what is it to be a good person? How do we behave well towards ourselves? How do we behave well towards others? Like, why are we just not being good role models to each other? Why? Like, who is going to look up to us if we can't even have good role models within the community? Like, the population at large is just going to find us embarrassing, And so I would say, like, I'm very inspired by the Christians right now and like how they're reacting to this assassination. They're reacting with a lot of grace and compassion, much, much more than, I think the witchy community does. And Melissa says, you've been less than impressed by the feedback of some witches. Absolutely. And if you want to share some of what you've seen people say, like, feel free, because I think some people might not know. Like, I saw some very famous witchy dude who I fucking don't like, but that's another story. Say like, oh, I hope the bullet had a good day. This is someone who like young witches are looking up to. It's not cool. Not cool. I would not say that about my worst enemy if they got assassinated. It wouldn't even cross my mind. And so I think we need some kind of revival of ethics and morals and inner work. And I think witchcraft needs a revival of spirituality and a connection to something greater, even if you're an atheist, and it's going to come from like an animist space. I'm just like frustrated, you guys. Tony says, we have a real problem with our gov here in the UK. Our PM reminds me so much of your previous PM, JT. Yeah. They say one thing and do another. I think the problem is and I'm thinking that's probably cut off, Tony. So hopefully you keep talking and we can see the rest of that thought. And I think you're right. You're right about that, right? There is, I would say, like a suicidal empathy with some of these like liberal, left-leaning leaders. And they are not, I would say, a good example of grace and compassion. They say that they are, but it really ends up doing more harm to everybody, I would say. I have a smoothie, you guys. I'm going to take a few sips. If anyone's curious, the Sabrina smoothie recipe is oat milk, bananas, strawberries, protein powder, cinnamon, salt, ice, water. Oh my God, Melissa, can you send that to me? That sounds fucking crazy. Let me read that for everyone. Melissa said, a witch whom I consider extremely empathic and intelligent said that Charlie Kirk had a cult of death going with his love for guns and whatnot. I'm still actively looking for the clips. If you find that, actually, I'm going to be optimistic. When you find that, send it to me because I want to see that. And as you guys know, like, I'm not really naming people. So I doubt I would put anyone on blast, but by name, but I probably would address what was said because I feel like people need to know, like, this is just messed up. And the thing is, like, he didn't have a cult of death. Like, he was pretty fucking chill. He was like the one person that was willing to have these conversations across difference, you know? And was he pro Second Amendment? Yeah, he was. But it's like, even I feel like the gun rights people are missing the point. 'Cause it's like, even if guns were banned in the United States, let's just imagine, like, there would still be these assassinations. It would just happen in a different way. Like, people can still create weapons. People still have weapons. Like, where there's a will, there's a way. And the problem is the ideology, right? Guns are only a problem when the ideology, someone's mental, is messed up. You know, if someone really wants to assassinate somebody, they would like bomb their house or something, you know? Guns, I don't think guns are really the issue with this assassination. Did it facilitate a much easier assassination? Obviously. But I think where there's a will, there's a way, and people get assassinated in all kinds of different ways. And the problem is that ideology, that mindset, that way of thinking that justifies it to that person. Apparently, the murderer said some kind of hate can't be reasoned out. That was his reasoning. That was his motivation, which is hilarious because that's all Charlie Kirk did was reason with people. Very strange. Melissa says, I own half a dozen guns and you know how to use them. Uncommon in Quebec. Good for you. That's fucking awesome. I was actually talking with someone about that yesterday of wanting to go to a range here in Canada and learn the ways. Because I have shot guns in Texas and I was actually a really good shot just naturally. And interestingly, I had a conversation with my dad a few weeks ago about guns. And I didn't know this, but apparently like some variation of grandfather was like a very good shot, apparently, in military circumstances. I don't know if he was like a sniper or something similar, but apparently my dad also has a good shot. So apparently it runs in the family to be a very good shot. So I kind of want to give it a go. It's been probably 15 years since I've shot a gun. But I would like to do it. I think it would be interesting. And I think a lot of the left, interestingly, is starting to do this as well because they're so afraid of the right and they see themselves, I think, as wanting to learn the right's skills to protect themselves because they're so afraid of the right. There is a pagan author who I actually unfriended on Facebook recently because of his like vile comments about the assassination. I was just like, I cannot be connected to this person anymore. Sorry. But who is doing like gun lessons and stuff like that. So I think it is more common for more left-wing people to be starting to think in that way. But I think they see it differently than we do as conservatives. We see it as personal protection. There's going to be also hunters. I'm vegan, so obviously I'm not going to do that. But I think conservative people see it as like right to self-protection. And I think left-wing people see it as they want to hurt other people is kind of what it seems like to me. Because that's kind of what we've seen play out lately in the States. Tony says, you're right, Sabrina. It's a convenient way to act from a distance without getting caught. Yeah. And so it's like this ideology is so harmful and so toxic that they are committing murder just due to disagreement. And they call you Hitler if you just have a different opinion than them. I saw this meme. It was pretty funny. It was like, there are 50 genders, but there's 2 opinions, mine and Hitler, which I think like nicely encapsulates like some of the logic of that side of things, unfortunately. Jillian says, yes, I feel like we should have the right to protect ourselves. Absolutely. I feel like I would like there to be more laws around that in Canada. So I feel like the laws around that in Canada are a little bit like leave something to be desired. There's actually, I don't know if my Americans or international folks watching this know this, but there was a situation recently in my province where this guy got his house broken into, and there's like a burglar with like, who like tried to, I don't know, he had a weapon of some sort. And so then the homeowner got charged for like protecting himself against this like violent intruder in his home. Like that would never happen in America. Like you're like basically going to get in trouble if you defend yourself in Canada, which is, I think, wrong. But yeah, I would like to learn to be doing that. And Melissa, I'm going to actually maybe DM you, or maybe you can DM me about like the legalities of that in our country, because I actually don't really know what that is. So I know it did change under Trudeau. Melissa says you're not allowed self-defense with a firearm in Canada, as far as you're aware. Yeah, I think how the laws are in Canada is that it has to be like the same or lesser force. So it's like if you've escalated the force, then you're going to get charged. So it's like if someone has a knife, I don't think you're allowed to use a gun. But if they have a gun, I think you can use a gun. It's just like fucking crazy. Like honestly, if someone's trying to stab me and I have a gun, like I'm probably going to use it. Like I'm not going to be like, oh, whoops. Well, how does this measure up? Like the Canadian laws are fucking nuts. Like Americans would have a meltdown if they knew what the laws were here. It's fucking crazy. But apparently the catch and release stuff is a mess in the States too, because we saw the murder. I'm sure you guys all saw this on the bus of that Ukrainian refugee, that beautiful young woman, just got stabbed for minding her own business with this man who I think was saying, oh, I got the white girl or something like that. And he had been like out on bail like a bazillion times, like a repeat violent offender. What is going on? I think, again, it goes back to suicidal empathy. It causes destruction to society, I believe. Sometimes we should not be empathetic in this way. And this is what you were saying, actually, Melissa, about that person, the witch that you were saying that you perceive her as being like empathic or empathetic. And it's like these people who are empathetic, quote unquote, it actually causes the most violence and the most destruction and the most chaos, actually, to be like what's the right word? Indiscriminately empathetic in that way. It's interesting. Tony says it happens in the UK here, where the homeowner gets a sentence for defending themselves in their home. It doesn't make any fucking sense. If someone comes into my home, I should be able to do whatever the fuck I want, I think. Like that, like trespassing, hello. So I think Canada needs castle law, and I think it sounds like the UK needs castle law too. I don't really know. I think only some states have it. In the States, I could be wrong. Melissa says, empathy can create so much chaos. Yeah. It can. And I'm not saying that like empathy is bad. But I think, I don't know how to phrase this. Because a lot of people have said like, oh, well, I'm not going to have empathy for Charlie Kirk because I disagreed with him. But it's like, I think we should be able to have empathy for Charlie Kirk for being murdered, even if we disagree with him. Personally, we can have empathy for the criminal who grew up in a bad circumstance, and that's why he's a criminal. But it doesn't mean that the law doesn't apply to him. Do you know what I mean? It's like, Jillian says the amount of people slamming Kirk's funeral online was really upsetting. I didn't see that because I actually had the book fair the entire day of the funeral, which was also the eclipse new moon, which is crazy to me that, you know, the funeral happened on the eclipse. I think that's fucking crazy. But I do plan to watch that. Yeah. It's just like people are so fucking crazy. Like how classless and tacky and mentally unwell do you have to be to slam the funeral of a 31-year-old gentleman who got murdered in front of his wife and children? That is the most tacky, classless, like disgusting thing to do. Like people are devoid of empathy. It is unhinged. And I think this thing, like for me, this is like a there's no turning back type of like line in the sand type of moment. It's like these people, like, how do we live amongst them when they want us dead? I don't know. In 2025, I learned how many people would be happy if I died. That is what this whole situation has taught me, which is deeply disturbing. Deeply disturbing. So to me, like, there's no going back from it. Like, for me, it's like unleashed my throat chakra. Like, I can now, like, not hold back. I think that's why I'm talking a little bit more explicitly about this stuff now. Just like, you know, I think the solution is not to silence ourselves. The solution is more speech. The solution is speaking up. The solution is critique. The solution is discussing these things from a space of, like, intellectual fortitude and moral clarity and thinking about it spiritually. It is not spiritual to be, you know, doing that. Oh, all 3 cats in the screen. All the babies. Jaya. She's so sweet. She's kind of evil, but that's okay. How do you approach these topics with people from the left without immediately getting shut down? Thank you for the question, Jillian. That's a good question. And then Melissa says solution is even more respectful conversations with disagreeing opinions. Tony says they should live and let live and have respect for life, and no one has the right to take another's life. I agree. Except for I'm actually all right with the death penalty, which maybe will surprise people. But like, I'm happy this dude is probably going to get the death penalty. But that's fine for me. It's very un-Canadian of me to think that. That's how you knew I grew up in America. But back to your question, Jillian. I'm going to have to take off pretty shortly, but just about 5 minutes. But so I do want to answer this before I go. Jillian says, how do you approach these subjects with people from the left without getting immediately shut down? So this is the thing. So they do immediately shut you down pretty much. They will just call you a fascist. They'll call you a Nazi. They'll ask you like all these silly questions that really have like nothing to do with what you're talking about. Like they love to like jump around to like different topics. Like as soon as you've successfully like shut down something on one topic, they're gonna switch to something else. And so a lot of them, like, they don't know how to debate. They don't know how to discuss logically. They discuss based on heightened emotion, and like they can't control their emotions, which is why what Charlie was doing, it was so powerful. And I don't know of any left-wing person who was doing that, who was going into, let's say, conservative environments and having a sign basically that said, like, prove me wrong, let's talk. People who disagree with me to the front of the line. If there is a left-wing person who's been doing that, please send that name my way. I haven't seen it. I don't feel like it exists because that's not how leftists behave. They basically just think that everyone who disagrees with them is a Nazi and should be like murdered or just called names. I'm sure you guys probably saw me talk about this either on my Instagram stories or on Threads. Last week, I went to a talk. It was supposed to be about AI. The speaker was going to be Canada's brand new minister for AI. And so it was supposed to be an hour-long talk. I was pretty excited to hear what this gentleman had to say. But it got shut down by not one, not two, not three, but 16 Palestine protesters. And what they should have done, I think, was stand peacefully outside the talk and hand out pamphlets with their arguments, outlining their ideas, and hand it out to people. Okay, whatever. Then they could explain what they had to say in a logical, calm way. They would actually get us to see what the fuck it is they had to say. But instead, what they did was stand up every, like, I don't know, every 3.5 minutes. Because there was 16 of them in an hour. So I don't know what the math is on that. 16 people over the span of 60 minutes were standing up and like screaming. Some of whom, like, you couldn't actually understand what the fuck it is they were saying. Like, they sounded like a dying animal or like a dog barking. Like, someone replied to my Instagram story being like, if I close my eyes, that literally sounds like a dog barking. And they would just scream. They would just scream whatever thing they had to say. And like, it was impossible to really understand what they were saying. It was always these people talking something about Palestine, blah, 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 like calling everyone a genocide, this, blah, 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 blah. They were saying that you should go to hell, you're disgusting, you should be ashamed, just like screaming. And it got to be kind of funny. Like, at first it was scary kind of because they were like so angry and so loud, and everyone was kind of like, ooh, ooh, you know, a bit freaked out. But there was so many of them. They're just popping up like, I don't know what the expression is. They're just popping up every 2 seconds. And it was just these same talking points, just insulting everyone, totally disrespectful. Couldn't understand what the fuck they were saying. And it just got to be kind of like hilarious after a while. Like, so I would start laughing, and like a lot of other people also started laughing. And I really think that's the only way to like shut these people down, is just by laughing at them, because they're so ridiculous. Like, I felt like I was in a comedy skit. Like, it was that insane. Like you could not have designed a better like comedy skit making fun of these people. They enacted it themselves. And it makes me grumpy when I think about it too, because like the whole thing was sold out. And so it's like they took 16 seats away from people who actually would have wanted to have gone and listened to what the discussion would have been about the future of Canada and AI. And so none of us got to hear anything. And they took away all these seats. And it was just so lame, man. Like, that's not protesting. Like, that's not what protesting really should be about. Like, you know, like, they didn't really get their message out. All of us now just think that they're crazy lunatics. Like, that's just what it looks like. You know, they did not seem rational, sane. Like, you know, when has anyone ever screamed at you at the top of their lungs? And then have you ever said like, oh yes, this sounds very logical. I agree with you. I'm going to change my stance. Like, I'm sorry. Like, that is not persuasive. Like, yelling to scream at someone that you should go to hell and you're disgusting and blah, blah, blah. Like, if someone did that to me, even if I did something horrible, which I haven't, but even if I did, I would probably be like, whoa, like, I'm so blessed that you've shown yourself to be a crazy person. And so good riddance, goodbye. Like, maybe I was in the wrong, but still, like, ooh, like, yikes. Like, I don't want that energy around me. Yeah, it was fucking weird. And so it's like, how do you get them to talk to you? You can't, this is the thing, you can't force anyone to do anything. This is one of the tenets of magic, right? Like, we shouldn't be trying to control other people. They're on their own journey, unfortunately. And I think a lot of them are on a very challenged, deluded journey where they're very in an adolescent headspace. It's very like reversed page, reversed night energy, where they're just blaming everyone else for their problems, and they're very misguided, unfortunately. And so it's like, how do you get people to listen to you? Like, they don't like logic. They don't like having a rational discussion, unfortunately. You know, and so if you do find people who will discuss, like, engage, my biggest thing is to ask questions. I almost never use statements when I have these discussions with people. And this pisses people off because a lot of time they don't have answers to unique questions. They just have their kind of like thought terminating cliches is what it's called in like the cult literature. They just have these kind of brain dead, like, meme sentences they just repeat ad nauseum, even if it's not really like relevant to what you're talking about. And so this is the other thing too, is like, if someone isn't asking me questions, I usually don't decide to have a debate with them, because I know that they don't actually care about understanding me. They just want to bulldoze. And so that's a big rule for me, is like I'll only really discuss something if someone asks me things, rather than just says, oh, so you think this, you think that, you think this, you think that. And it's like, well, if you asked me what I thought, you would know the actual answer to that. So this is the thing, like taking it back to the topic, like this is how a lot of witchy people are behaving on the internet. They're behaving like those screaming people at the AI event, but they're doing like the internet version of that, of just screaming online. And it's just like very weird. It's not cute. It's not cute. So yeah, how do we bridge this fucking situation? I don't know. I would like to try to lead by example and host these discussions here on YouTube during Sunday service and talk about it a bit on my podcast. But I really appreciate like the chat popping off here. And the last time I did this, the chat was also going off too, which is great, because like then we can kind of come together and like discuss like, I've seen this, I've seen that, I've experienced this, I've experienced that, and like talk about this shit that we've seen in the community and like discuss, okay, how do we move forward? Because I don't want witches to be seen as the laughing stock. I don't want witches to be seen as immoral, evil people. Tony says they probably think they had a positive outcome from their shouting and bawling. They should have been told to demonstrate sensibly or be removed. Yeah, and like there was security, like this poor long-suffering security guard like gently kind of like led them out of the room. But like you could see in his face, he was like, fuck, another one. And it like they just kept popping up. It was very silly. And yeah, it's silly, but it is the left who is terminating conversations. It is the left who are destructive. And, you know, one of the reasons why I love discussion, debate is like, and I love talking to people across difference, is like, it will teach me how to better articulate my view, and it will teach me where the holes in my argument are, so I can be more persuasive the next time I'm having a conversation with someone. But unfortunately, it's like these people are so fragile, like emotionally and intellectually fragile, that they have no capacity for that. They have nothing for that. They hit their threshold, their limit of being challenged. Like it takes like this much, which is why I think all these people are so triggered all the time. It's crazy. Grown ass adults acting that way. I should go though. I'm supposed to be somewhere shortly. So I should go, but this has been great. I should have logged on earlier because I feel like this conversation was really interesting, and I'm really appreciating all of the feedback from y'all in the chat. And I'm glad y'all feel me. And for anyone watching the replay, like please leave a comment, leave a like. Let me know what you thought. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. It's all good. Just don't be a dick if you decide to disagree with me. Just like logicify your argument in the comments. That would be great. And I'll chat with you guys, I think on Sunday. I think I can actually do another Sunday service this Sunday. And so let me know if you want me to kind of continue on this topic or talk about something related or something different, and we will figure it out. And thank you, as always, to everyone for being here. I really appreciate all y'all who show up and have these conversations with me, because I know they're a little bit spicy, they're a little bit uncomfortable, and they do like ask something of us, which I know not everyone like wants to do, but I think it's important. So much love, everyone, and I'll see you guys on Sunday. Bye.